Ukraine's parliament says its presidential election didn't reflect the will of the people. Mass protests by both sides continue. The courts will decide whether to rerun the ballot. Pension round, the government defends its plans to exempt judges from new taxes. And it's double delight for Australia as they claim victory in both rugby codes. Good evening. The Ukrainian parliament has declared the results of last week's disputed presidential election invalid. MPs meeting in emergency session overwhelmingly agreed that the vote was fraudulent and at odds with the will of the people. Although the parliament's decision has no legal force, it's been welcomed by the opposition leader Viktor Yushchenko. The Supreme Court will now meet on Monday to consider whether to order a rerun of the election. Our special correspondent Ben Brown is in the capital, Kiev. Ben?
Yeah, Darren, that decision by the Ukrainian parliament really has thrilled opposition demonstrators here in Kiev. They're out in force again behind me in Independence Square, celebrating what they think is a very significant victory. In their thousands, opposition protesters besieged Ukraine's parliament as it debated the election results that have split this country down the middle. The opposition are highly organised, handing out free food and cups of tea to the demonstrators, who say they'll stay on the streets for as long as it takes. They insist last weekend's vote was a fraud, and today Ukraine's parliament agreed with them. MPs declared the election result invalid. Opposition members gave each other high fives of delight, but many from the government benches didn't even turn up for the debate. And this parliament's decision is not legally binding. Even so, it infuriated those who support the government. Today, tens of thousands of them staged a huge counter-demonstration in Donetsk. It's on the eastern side of the Ukraine, the pro-Russian side. These people say there was nothing wrong with last week's election at all, and that their candidate, Viktor Yanukovych, won fair and square. If he doesn't become president, they're threatening to break away from Ukraine. Passions are running high, but in Kiev, protesters from both sides of the divide mingled happily. Take these two, for example, the lady in government blue, the man in opposition orange. We love each other, he says, despite our different colours. Even the police were arguing with each other today. The officers on the right support the government, those on the left the opposition. In sub-zero temperatures, they debated the technicalities of absentee ballots. There have been dire predictions this crisis could escalate into violence, but all here seem to agree it's words they should be using, not weapons.
And Ben, if this parliamentary vote isn't going to resolve the situation, how are they going to break the impasse?
Yeah, I mean, the parliamentary vote today was symbolic. The whole session was really a bit of a sideshow. The crucial meeting is the Supreme Court. Now, it meets on Monday to decide whether last weekend's vote was fraudulent. It meets on Monday, but it could take up to 2 weeks to come up with a result. So all the people here in Ukraine are waiting with bated breath.
All right, Ben, thank you for that. The government's defended its plans to exempt judges from new taxes on their pensions. Earlier this week, ministers proposed a new law designed to maintain the current value of their pensions, after a warning that large numbers of judges would otherwise resign.
With a starting salary of £90,000, judges are used to high earnings and large pensions. So there's been much concern over government plans to impose tax penalties on people with pension funds worth more than £1.5 million. In a letter, the most senior civil servant at the Department for Constitutional Affairs warned, in discussion with the judiciary, they have expressed the view that failure to resolve this would cause both a significant number of judges to resign and those thinking of applying for the bench to reconsider their position. The threat has led to the Judicial Pensions Bill. Announced on the day of the Queen's speech, it will allow judges to escape the tax penalty. But to critics, the decision looks like preferential treatment for the already privileged.
We do seem to have got into an extraordinary position where many people see their pensions losing value or perhaps the schemes closed altogether, And then this special group is to be given an exemption by Tony Blair from a pension tax that Gordon Brown himself is introducing.
Ministers insist no one's being favoured. Judges, like some other high earners, don't contribute themselves to their pensions. But those other high earners can avoid the new tax penalties by opting for a different scheme. Judges can't. So ministers argue they're only bringing judges into line with other high earners.
Judges' pensions are pensions provided by the state. They don't contribute to them. Therefore, they should be able to opt out of that, just like any other person whose contributions have been made not by them, but by their employer.
But tonight, some Labour backbenchers told me the decision appeared to be unfair. Although some ministers might think this move is fair and sensible, many people will be left with the impression that fat cat judges are being cushioned from taxes. It means for the government this decision is politically risky. Sue Littlemore, BBC News, Westminster.
Iraq's Electoral Commission says it won't postpone January's elections despite calls from some political groups to delay the vote because of continuing violence. In Fallujah, where the Americans led an assault on insurgents earlier this month, aid is being distributed for the first time since the fighting. From Baghdad, Caroline Hawley reports.
The ruins of a city that once housed about 300,000 people. The aftermath of what the American military has called its most intense urban combat since the Vietnam War. Fallujah, known to Iraqis as the city of mosques, is now a ghost town. The vast majority of its residents had fled before the assault. Some of the families that stayed and survived, now preparing to leave. Fallujah has no running water and no electricity. Buildings are said to be booby-trapped, and most of the dead are not yet buried. The Iraqi government estimates that over 2,000 people were killed here, along with more than 50 American Marines. But no one knows how many civilians died. Many homes, though, and businesses were destroyed. Am I a terrorist, this woman says, and my children too. My son was killed, and now where will I live? For more than 2 weeks, there was no independent access to Fallujah. These pictures filmed when the Iraqi Red Crescent finally got in. It's now beginning to evacuate civilians to a safer place. So far, though, the Red Cross says men between the ages of 15 and 55 aren't being allowed out. By attacking a city that had become a base for insurgents, the Americans had hoped to help pacify the whole country for elections due to be held on January the 30th. In Baghdad, the posters promise that Iraqis will be able to vote in total freedom and security, but there are growing doubts.
It's less than a week since a date was set for Iraq's first elections after the overthrow of Saddam Hussein. The Americans are pushing hard for them to be held on time. Calls for a delay are coming even from some of their staunchest allies.
But the Iraqi government says that despite continuing violence, it doesn't want a delay. And Iraq's Independent Electoral Commission is insisting that the bullets won't stop the vote. Caroline Hawley, BBC News, Baghdad.
More than 1,000 people in Coventry have protested against plans to close the Jaguar car plant there. The unions say hundreds of jobs could be lost, but Ford, which owns the company, says it must move production to other UK plants to secure Jaguar's long-term future. England's cricket captain Michael Vaughan has suggested the controversial tour to Zimbabwe will be cut short if his players are forced to shake hands with President Robert Mugabe. England arrived in Harare yesterday and play their first one-day match tomorrow. Adam Parsons sent this report.
Rain in Harare, the weather now the only thing likely to stop England playing Zimbabwe here tomorrow. Yet for the first time, England's captain has spoken publicly of why he and his team had been on the brink of boycotting this tour.
Concern we had that we'd been used as political pawns to make a statement. You know, we've always felt it was going to be a tough tour. You know, and there's always been a lot of issues surrounding the tour, but, you know, we felt enough was enough.
Their threat helped ban journalists to get into this country, and the players followed. Today, local cricketers were helping England to ready themselves. So England's players complete their final preparations ahead of tomorrow's opening game against Zimbabwe. It's a game they really should win comfortably. But the curiosity of this tour is that the matches are playing second fiddle to the politics and intrigue. These players have again been assured they won't have to shake the hand of President Robert Mugabe. Should he try, the tour may well be cancelled. But among the fans at Harare Sports Club, there is simply relief that England are here.
I think sport must be sport and politics is a separate issue.
We're sports mad, we love the game, and let the first over start, quite frankly.
The critics here would disagree vehemently. Zimbabwe's youthful captain is already weary of the politics and scrutiny of his job.
It's always a frustrating time, being asked about politics. I'm a cricketer. I'm paid, by my union to play cricket, and I pretty much love, to just be asked the questions about cricket and to leave the politics aside.
But it is England who feel most awkward here. About to start a series few of them really want to play. Adam Parsons, BBC News, Harare.
Now with news of a double defeat for England by Australia and all the Premiership results, here's Chris Hollins. Chris.
Thank you very much, Darren. Good evening. We'll start with the rugby action. There were two internationals against Australia, one union, one league, and both have ended in defeat. At Ellen Road, the Great Britain Rugby League team were hoping for a first series win over Australia for over 30 years. But in tonight's Tri-Nations final, they were thrashed by 44 points to 4.
They came to Leeds with real hope. Generations of fans who have never seen Great Britain beat Australia in a major series. The 34-year wait for that goes on. The Kangaroos gave the Lions an absolute thumping. No better way to describe the way they tore through Great Britain's paper-thin defence, with try after try, 6 by half-time. Anthony Minicello and Willie Tonga with 2 apiece. Their returning captain, Darren Lockyer, was inspirational. A try and faultless kicking earned him the Man of the Match award. He helped rack up an incredible 38 points by half-time. The contest was over. Brian Noble and Andy Farrell, international coach and player of the year, tried to lift a shell-shocked dressing room. Perhaps to their credit, the second half wasn't so one-sided. Stuart Reardon cancelled out a Willie Mason try. Not that he celebrated. His were the only points Great Britain scored on a night when they were truly humbled.
Australia have once again proved that they are the best side in world rugby, winning when it really matters. Great Britain will take nothing out of this beating. It really has been the most embarrassing of lessons. Ollie Foster, BBC News at Ellen Road.
Well, as for the Australian Rugby Union team, they got their revenge on England after the World Cup final defeat in Sydney. The Wallabies won at Twickenham this afternoon for the first time in 6 years, but it was another close match.
Inevitably, the memory of events in Sydney a year ago were on the minds of all as they flocked to Twickenham this afternoon. But as it turned out, the match was to be a mirror image of that unforgettable World Cup final. England, with a mere 4 survivors of that encounter, were a pale imitation of their reputation in the first half, sloppy everywhere, particularly in defence, as Jeremy Paul scythed through them for the opening try. Things didn't improve either. In fact, they got worse, as Chris Latham burst through flimsy tackles to give the Australians a 12-point lead. Unable even to land a trademark penalty in Johnny Wilkinson's absence, England at least rediscovered their forward might in the second half, bulldozing Lewis Moody over. Ascendant now, they repeated the dose soon after, this time Josh Lucy peeling away to go over unopposed. But the best was yet to come. Speed of thought, legs and hands at last synchronised to perfection for Mark Cueto joyously to put England 19-15 ahead amid the Twickenham tumult.
But the Australians weren't finished. 2 Matt Giteau penalties, they'll love the irony of that, giving them a famous victory.
There's a harsh lesson that's been learned today, and and I think that will make the team even tighter, and it will just highlight to us all what an unforgiving place international rugby can be at times.
While it could never match the drama of that epic World Cup final in Sydney, this match was, if anything, even better. The Australians just about deserved to win it and will reflect that revenge is indeed very sweet. Kevin Geary, BBC News, Twickenham.
It was a disappointing day for Scotland as well. They were well beaten by South Africa at Murrayfield. The Springboks won by 45 points to 10. South Africa were trying to avoid their 3rd defeat on the trot, and they were helped by some poor Scottish play. 2 tries from the Springbok winger. Brian Habana helped the Tri-Nations champions to a convincing victory. Better news for Ireland, but only just. They needed an injury-time drop goal from Ronan O'Gara to beat a very impressive Argentina side. Remember, they beat France last week. The final score at Lansdowne Road, 21-19. Now, you can see all the goals from today's Premiership games in Match of the Day after this programme, but here's a quick roundup of all the scores. Birmingham City and Norwich City drew 1-1. Portsmouth, without Harry Redknapp, beat Bolton 1-0. Chelsea extended their lead at the top of the Premiership with a resounding 4-0 win at Charlton. John Terry scored twice. Blackburn are off the bottom with a win at Fulham. Manchester City beat Aston Villa 2-0. Southampton drew with Crystal Palace, while Manchester United won 3-0 at West Brom. 2 goals there for Paul Scholes. So Chelsea are now 5 points clear at the top. Arsenal play Liverpool tomorrow. Everton are also in action on Sunday against Newcastle. Manchester United are up to 4th. As for the bottom, West Brom dropped to the foot of the table. Norwich and Southampton stay in trouble, while Blackburn are out of the relegation zone. In the Scottish Premier League, Celtic and Rangers play tomorrow, so the rest of the teams had a chance to close the gap on the top 2. Third place Aberdeen did just that with a win against Dundee United. Steve Tosh with the goal. Hibernian stay 4th after beating Inverness Caledonian Thistle. Kilmarnock lost at home to managerless Livingston, while Motherwell beat Dunfermline. Now, Ellen MacArthur has embarked on her latest sailing challenge to beat the record for the fastest solo voyage around the world. The 28-year-old yachtswoman left Falmouth today on her 75-foot trimaran. She was cheered on by hundreds of well-wishers. The current record for the 20,000-mile journey stands at 72 days. That's it. Just time to tell you that the 9-4 favourite, Celestial Gold, won the big race of the day, the Hennessy Gold Cup at Newbury. That's it from me. Darren.
All right, Chris, thank you for that. Now, before we go, a reminder of the main news tonight. Ukraine's parliament has declared last Sunday's disputed presidential election invalid. Well, there'll be news throughout the night over on BBC News 24. But from Chris and from me, good night.
Good evening. We all know the weather is no respecter of geographical boundaries, but it does try and even itself out over a period of time, and that's really what's happening through this weekend. So where we've had the rain today across Scotland and Northern Ireland, tomorrow will be much drier, a good deal sunnier for many, although it will be a little bit colder. Noticeably colder, though, tomorrow for England and Wales. More cloud around, and particularly for eastern England, I think it will be a good deal wetter. Now, that said, the rain is already starting to clear away from Scotland and push down into northern England and much of Wales, and those rain bands will continue to drift southwards through the overnight period. We'll be just about frost-free across the south, but from northern England northwards, the possibility of a touch of frost, and that might just lead to a little bit of ice where we've had the rain through the day. So a cold start across the north, but as promised, sunnier skies here tomorrow. There will be some showers, chiefly across the north and the east coast of Scotland, but there'll be a bit more rain further south. Certainly likely to see showers clipping in across West Wales and down into Cornwall. But I think, by and large, Wales and Western England should get dry and brighter by the afternoon. It's really further east where we'll have thicker cloud, outbreaks of rain, a miserable day across much of eastern England. It will feel cold, a strong wind developing, arrowing in off the North Sea. Temperatures of just 5 or 6 or even 7 degrees, but feeling colder because of the strength of that wind. So a cold day tomorrow, temperatures falling away tomorrow night. A widespread frost on Monday morning, but most of us having a dry and bright Monday. Certainly much of England and Wales likely to stay that way into Tuesday as well. Have a very good night.
We at Union Carbide are saddened by the incident at our plant in Bhopal, India.
20 years on from the world's worst industrial accident, people are still dying every day. Breathtaking, isn't it?
That night destroyed the lives of 3 generations of my family.
The story of the Bhopal gas disaster. One Night in Bhopal, Wednesday at 9 on BBC One.
Now on BBC One, tonight's lottery news. In the main lotto draw, the winning numbers are 4, 7, 9, 10, 43 and 46. The bonus is 11. And it looks like there are 3 lucky jackpot winners, each of more than £1.7 million. The lotto extra numbers are 17, 22, 24, 31, 37 and 40. No winning tickets here, though, so the jackpot for the next draw is an estimated £4.4 million. In the daily play draw, which was witnessed by an independent auditor, the 7 winning numbers were 1, 2, 9, 12, 15, 18 and 21. Early indications here reveal more than 27,000 winning tickets. Finally, the Thunderball numbers are 11, 18, 22, 28 and 33. The Thunderball itself is 14.